Ed. What an excellent way to set the scene. I'm going to move us swiftly on to our first panel session of the day. I'm delighted to welcome Elvis from the FBI and Bobby from Unilever. So back over to Ed, who's the host of this session.
Thank you, Kelly, for the introduction, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this panel, Security 360, Perspectives on Evolving Risk Profiles from Around the World. For those of you who have just joined and missed my earlier introduction, my name is Ed Bishop. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Tessian, and the host of this panel. For those less familiar with us, Tessian builds technology to empower people to work safely without security getting in their way. Tessian's human layer security platform automatically protects your employees on email from risks like data exfiltration, accidental data loss, and phishing. So what can you expect to learn from today's session? We'll take a quick look at how risk profiles changed overnight with COVID-19 and discuss what our panelists have observed in the transition from offices to homes and what implications this has had on cybersecurity. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Elvis Chan from the FBI and Bobby Ford from Unilever. You all bring incredible perspectives from different corners of security and data privacy worlds, so I'm really excited to bring your expertise together so we can discuss these big topics from all angles. We want to make sure this session is as valuable as possible to the security community, so I want to remind the audience that they can submit questions to our panelists through the Q&A widget at the side of the screen. So to kick us off, Elvis, do you want to briefly introduce yourself and then followed by Bobby?
All right. Thanks again for having me, Ed and Tessian. Once again, my name is Elvis Chan. I'm a Supervisory Special Agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm in the San Francisco field office, and I run one of our cyber squads. So as you can imagine, we've been quite busy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bobby Ford, the Global Chief Information Security Officer for Unilever.
Great. Thank you both for the introductions. So Elvis, I'm going to kick off with you, and it's very topical. Since the world has essentially gone into lockdown due to COVID-19, remote working has dominated the security discussion. What are the biggest risks you've observed or the FBI are observing, and how are you thinking about protecting people during this new paradigm of working?
What we're doing right now, right? We're teleworking. I think that's top of mind for everyone. I have never heard of Zoom bombing until about 7 weeks ago, and now everyone knows about Zoom bombing. And I think the good news for everyone is that the FBI, and specifically me, I'm probably in maybe at least once a week, I'm either on the phone or in email conversations with them. And I think that's a good thing, that they welcome law enforcement involvement and talking. That's just one of the things that we're concerned with. I think even though that's what's been in the headlines, the things that concern me the most are that folks are teleworking and maybe their cybersecurity isn't fantastic. Maybe they aren't using some sort of device management system when they're logging into their corporate networks. That's like one thing in terms of corporate. And then the other thing is there's a lot of bad people out there looking to take advantage, use COVID-19 as a social engineering tactic, use it as a lure for spear phishing, for phishing, and for making fraudulent websites to either people to donate money or to actually think they're buying goods like N95 masks.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, it's super interesting to both think of it, I guess, from the corporate side, how can you protect your employees, but also just the realization that this is kind of a new situation that attackers can be taking advantage of and thinking about, what techniques they're going to be using to, leverage COVID-19 to their own advantage. Bobby, I guess you are uniquely positioned here to talk about kind of the corporate angle. What do you think organizations should be prioritizing due to this, shift to work from home? It seems to be a kind of juggling act between trying to get all your employees productive, back up to speed, making sure that they have all the tools that they need to do their job. The world can't stop, work goes on, but also you're trying to balance this against the security risks, introducing new tools, etc. How can organizations kind of navigate through this new challenge?
I think the first thing you have to do, right, is you have to recognize that overnight the threat landscape expanded exponentially. And then once you consider that, and it's not just about enabling employees to work remotely, but it's about recognizing that overnight you basically set up, for Unilever, 70,000 offices worldwide because you sent everyone to their individual homes. And so once you sort of philosophically, it's not just about deploying technical controls, but also about deploying administrative controls. And what I mean by that is you have to ensure that you secure the remote workforce, but you also have to make sure that employees are aware when they're working from home, the responsibility to create a secure environment while they work.
Yeah, it's so key. The point that you made about moving from 10 to thousands of offices overnight is absolutely critical to the conversations. And yeah, you've got to be thinking about technological, but also like it's completely changed your ops teams. Like, how do your ops teams now work in a world where everybody is in all these offices and they have all these requests? Administrative and technological solutions are very much needed. Elvis, maybe you
Right, right.
could go on. Sorry, yeah, Bobby.
No, I was just going to share a quick story. A buddy of mine, he's a CISO for one of the big four consultant firms, and he talked about this meeting that some of his colleagues were having, and then one of the participant in the meetings, one of their wives walked by in the background, and they were actually talking about pricing, and someone just happened to sort of send out a WhatsApp message that said, doesn't she work for, and it was one of the competitors. So it's not just about these physical, I mean, not just about these technical controls, but also about physical controls, being mindful of your environment.
Yeah, that's critical actually, and so key. It's something that I think not many people are thinking of. Most people think of their home as a safe environment. So they maybe are used to leaving their personal laptops unlocked. They may be used to taking personal calls wherever they like in the house. But then they're now talking about sensitive work matters. Many junior workers will be in shared homes, right? It's not even family. You're living with other people who work at different companies, and you might not know them or trust them that well. So it's kind of shifting perspectives for your employees about how they think about working securely from home. Elvis, it would be great. You mentioned this when you kicked it off about kind of attackers taking advantage of this new situation. It'd be really good if you could just give us a couple of examples of what you've seen, and particularly what the attacker maybe is trying to do to leverage this situation.
Two of the things that I really want to focus on are COVID-19 themed phishing emails. So those can come in a variety of forms. A lot of them are eliciting donations. They will have a link for you to go to a website. You click on that link, they're harvesting credentials. You go to the website and you can actually donate money to a fraudulent group, and you think you're donating money to a group in Louisiana that needs help, and you're actually donating it to a bunch of Romanian hackers. That's one thing. The other is just all of the different spoofed websites, right? So we've seen a lot of websites pretending to be the CDC or the WHO or even state and county level websites where you think you're going to get information, and then the bad guys are harvesting your information when you navigate to the website. Those are two of the things that we've been seeing a lot of.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, and we're seeing that on Tessian's end as well. Just the spike of email mentioning COVID-19. A decent portion of those are obviously legitimate. Many companies are trying to help during these times, offer advice, offer new technologies. But of course, there's the downside. There's the kind of dark side of this, which is the huge spike of COVID-19 related phishing emails, website spoofs, especially around domains. We're seeing things like, trying to take advantage of like a sense of urgency or worry. For example, we've seen attacks saying one of your colleagues has been infected. Click here to find out who they interacted with, etc. So it's really trying to play on this sense of, worry. Actually, it's a new world for everyone, and everyone's quite scared and worried, and they are trying to stay up to date with what's going on. And attackers are, of course, trying to take advantage of this. Bobby, sticking with this kind of work from home theme, I think it's very prevalent and it needs to be discussed. Tessian actually did some recent research, and we found that 48% of employees say they are less likely to follow safe data practices when working from home. Can you think, why might this be? Is it employees, trying to get away with more, or is it just that they are, maybe not set up, or they're working in new environments? Like, why are people thinking less about data security in their homes?
I think one of the challenges when you are working from home is just having this ability to remain focused. And I think that sort of when we go into the office, right, we put on our work uniform, or, we put on our work clothes, we have on our work shoes, we're in this work environment, this very professional environment, and we can be focused on the job at hand. We have a tendency when we work from home to sort of, work in shorts, to have slides on, and to be more relaxed. So it's this, I think that, like I said, this ability to remain focused. But something I do want to clarify is that I think it's important to remember that right now, this isn't typical working from home, right? And I saw this recent post that said, recognize that we're not just working from home, but that we're working at home during a crisis. And when you throw that crisis layer on top of it, it's just hard to remain focused because you have so many things going. Because typically, if you were working from home and you had children in the house, or you had a spouse, then your spouse would be at work and the children would be at school. Right now, everyone is at home. And so you're competing with bandwidth, you're competing with priorities. So you can fully expect that guards would go down, so it's no surprise that the attack surface goes up, the attack vector goes up, that there are more attacks because the adversary recognizes that guards go down, so then attacks will go up.
That's super interesting. And I guess maybe sticking with you, Bobby, actually, on that point, and double clicking on it. Yeah, work is not always top of mind, right? You've got family, you've got kids, you've got lots of distractions. You're trying to keep everything moving. You're worried about family, you're worried about friends. You're right. It's the word crisis is very important in this discussion. What can organizations do to kind of, empower employees, help them understand this new world, and actually bring security into the discussion in a positive way? Not necessarily, you must do this because you're now working from home, but how do you actually talk about it one that empowers them, doesn't scare them, doesn't make them feel like they're doing anything wrong, but lets them join the conversation and helps them realize why things have changed and why it might be important, that they're extra diligent when working from home.
I was a philosophy major, so I'll tell you a story, and hopefully it'll give you some idea of like my approach to security. I remember when my oldest daughter was learning how to walk, and we stayed in a really small apartment. And as she was learning to walk, she would stumble and she would fall. And my responsibility as her father was to keep her safe, to keep her secure. But she would stumble and fall. But I reckoned that was part of the walking, that she needed to learn how to pick herself up, that she learned how to fall, get back up. And so what I did was I would go around her and I would remove everything that was dangerous from her without her even being aware of it. Right? She was not even aware that I was protecting the environment around her. I think that as employers, we have to take that same approach. That as security professionals, we have to take that same approach. That we have to create a secure working environment without our employees even knowing it, because you have to understand that yards will go down. It's the same approach that we should take during tax season, the same approach we should take during the holiday season, just that their guards will go down, and bake that into your education and awareness program, bake that into your controls, that you can ramp those controls up, that you can ratchet those controls up, so that you're serving them and they're not even aware of it. And then just to follow up on that illustration, that one of the conversations that I kept having with a lot of my peers, in a lot of my peers in the CISO community, was, listen, we can't get in the way of these organizations as they're learning how to do this remote work. And I just saw that there were so many in the so many security professionals that wanted to deploy additional controls and lock everything down. And I was like, we're learning how to work from home. We're learning how to do remote work. We have to secure them without them even knowing it.
Yeah, that's it's such a good analogy about, protecting kids and giving them the safe environment to kind of be themselves and not, not make them worried about everything. And I really like you picked up on, training and awareness there as well. I think training and awareness often is discussed, I'd say mostly about inbound threats, data exfiltration, phishing emails, things coming in. But I think training and awareness in a work from home now has a whole new meaning, because it's training and awareness about things that might have been obvious when you were in the office. But now it's about reminding them, this is why locking your laptops is really important. Elvis, back over to you. I think we're talking about very people-centric issues here. Or what Tessian describes as human layer security. I know, Elvis, you've heard us mention this phrase many times. Do companies and technology vendors need to think differently about how to protect their people, given that threat vectors now clearly always involve things like human behaviors and relationships, which maybe standard or legacy technologies maybe have had a more kind of machine layer approach? How do you start thinking about protecting people more holistically?
I appreciate your question, Ed. And I really want to just add on to what Bobby was saying. I completely agree with Bobby's philosophy on all of this. At the end of the day, even though we may be on technology 5.0, we're still on human being 1.0. And so I really liked how Bobby was focusing on the well being of the employees. And what I would like to say is, instead of focusing on insider threat programs or information security programs, we should be focused on employee wellness programs. If we are caring for the well-being of our employees, then they won't be distracted. They'll be able to focus. They'll be able to take in the training. They'll be able to keep track. And, they know that whatever is good for the company will be good for their well-being as well. They're going to get bigger bonuses if there aren't big employee losses from business email compromises or other things.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I love a few things that you said there about human being 1.0. I think we're gonna steal that off you, Elvis, and reuse that. And yeah, I think this kind of idea of taking it out of this security context of information security training and data protection training and shifting it into, like, this is beneficial to you. This is like, we're here to help you. You're going to take these skills on and develop these skills, and they're going to get you your next job, because security is going to become more and more important, and it's something to be proud of, and it's something to engage with and adapt. I love that kind of repositioning. Bobby, I think you may be going to be have a few ideas around this, because you've already touched on it. Kind of following on from what Elvis was saying, it's kind of a culture shift, right? It's companies who's maybe, you've maybe spent 30 years working in the IT industry, but this is a culture shift about thinking about employee wellness and kind of trying to reposition it about, how do we look after our people versus how do we, maybe put up barriers and make people dislike or distrust security teams or security products? How can organizations think culturally about how to, I'm sure many people listening are keen to hear about some techniques of how organizations can change the way that they think about security.
And this is just speaking about me. Like I said earlier, I was a philosophy major, so this is just like my philosophy, and it's sort of like this approach that I've adapted, and I recognize that there are many in the industry that don't feel this way, so I get that. But unless you are in a technology company, or unless you are in a cyber company, I think you have to sort of understand where you fit in the hierarchy. And for me, it's always the business first, what we're in the business to do, the business first, IT second, and then cyber third. Because I recognize that from a cyber perspective, we're to make sure that our technology, right, whether that's IT, OT, IoT, we're there to make sure that our technology and the data, that it's secure. And then the business is there. And then IT is there to enable the business. And so cyber is there to enable the business to take risk. Once you philosophically understand that approach, and again, something else that I'll say that I recognize is very controversial. Once you understand that approach, or once you take on that approach, you recognize who has the risk decision. You understand who makes the risk decision. And then it's just about security aligning to the risk decision that's been made. It's about security deploying controls that align to the business risk appetite.
Yeah, I like the way that you position that about, every organization's different. you've got to understand your risk exposure. You've got to understand who owns the risk, and you've got to understand the industry or the size of company. I think I'm probably very guilty of this, of thinking through the lens of Tessian and how we can have a security culture, but that can be very different to a 10,000 person organization, 50,000 person organization, and it's for everyone to understand that not every company is different, and you've got to figure out what security means for you and your organization. I love that.
Yep.
I think we're almost at time, and we have one audience Q&A, which I'm just going to pull out. And I think, Elvis, you may be well positioned to take this because you actually alluded to it in your intro section. And the question that's come from the audience is, if I paraphrase, essentially a challenging situation that they're finding as their teams are trying to enable people to work from home. But this means, evaluating and choosing technologies such as collaboration apps and video conferencing solutions more quickly than they'd like to. I guess they're being rushed into making the decision. And they've also stated that in the news, these new solutions often vulnerabilities are mentioned in the news, and you maybe go for a new piece of software and then you're reading about vulnerabilities. I think you already mentioned Zoom bombing earlier on, so I wonder if you can talk about how companies can think about assessing these platforms. Are they truly risky, or is it more about taking a pragmatic approach to get your organization up and running?
So you bring up a really good question, Ed, and I get this question a lot. At the end of the day, the Federal Bureau of Investigation can't endorse any application for teleconferencing over another. What I would say is it really depends on what you want to use it for. So if you are a teacher and you want to be doing remote learning with your kids, I think Zoom is a fine product, right? It's very easy to use. But if you want to be having more high level or proprietary discussions, you should probably be looking at some of the other applications that have better encryption, that have been shown to have more reliability and a longer track record. I think you can think of some. The FBI, even though I'm not endorsing any one product, I do want to let you know that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, we're a Microsoft shop, right? I'm on a PC right now. We have PCs at work. Typically, we use Skype for talking, and we use Microsoft Teams for teleconferencing. However, there are lots of equivalent products that are out there. And so I would tell people really kick the tires on all the different products to see what will fit your needs the best.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Elvis. Yeah, and I guess to conclude, it's about I saw Bobby nodding as well. Understanding what task you want to do, what data is being shared, what you're discussing, and just make a pragmatic approach about the right technology solution that ticks, those boxes for you. So I'm afraid that that's all we have time for, but thank you to all those who submitted questions. For those that we didn't manage to cover, we'll be sure to follow up with you individually to continue the conversation. I want to say a huge thank you to Bobby and Elvis for sharing your insights with us today. I hope you'll agree it's been great to discuss some of the biggest challenges our industry has collectively faced, and I'm sure in some form or another, remote working is here to stay. And thank you to our audience for listening to this session. I'll be handing back over to Kelly, who will take us through onto the next session now, so stay tuned.